I had been to Renegade Craft Fair, and I had this idea when I was there. People display their stuff in nice vintage jars and that kind of thing, and I thought, well, there's no antique show or vintage market that caters to the same younger audience and takes place in the city. And I met Libby through my blog. I did a house tour on her apartment, and I came over and we hung out for a while, and I sort of told her about my idea. We'd never met before, and we just sort of hit it off, and I was like, hey, I got this idea for this market, we should do it. Like, we thought we were gonna do it at a bar. We're like, let's just do it at Empty Bottle and have like 10 vendors, and I'm sure 75 people will show up. But we did it, we ended up doing it a little bigger of a venue, which was Donk House, and then 3,000 people showed up. So we're like, well, I guess we have to keep doing this.
Incredibly logistical heavy and political, and it's just, there's so much to, like, you know, getting everybody loaded in a timely manner, but without like causing a bottleneck. You know, little details that can like make everything a mess.
From a production standpoint, it's a pretty complicated event, but and then even, you know, the way beforehand that we go to find the vendors, like we spend like the first maybe 4 months before the bazaar, we put out a call for applications because we want to find people who haven't done this kind of market before. So maybe people who haven't done all of the different suburban flea markets. I mean, we have some of those people too who are antique dealers who do this all the time, but we want to find people who just have an Etsy shop and maybe haven't sold in real life before. So we put the call out for vendors, application on the site, and then we get more applications than we can actually give spaces out, so we have to go through the applications and kind of send the acceptances out and figure out who's going to fit in and have a good balance, so that goes into it as well.
There's from every walk of life, you know, it's a huge varied crowd, and but I would say we did a survey, and most folks are like, you know, between 20 and 35, and most of them live in like Ukrainian Village, Logan Square, and Wicker Park, which sort of, there's no other word to use other than hipster. So
hipsters.
There's like
hipsters come.
A large part of the group is that. I think the trend has been around for at least like the last 8 years.
But remember in the 90s, like it was real, like in the 90s, everyone was like, ooh, 70s, you know.
Like making fun of it?
No, like wearing bell bottoms and stuff. And there were like vintage shops where they sold like patchouli and old Schoolhouse Rock
like
posters.
head shops.
It's different. It's just different. It goes through phases. I think now vintage is more accepted as you could wear vintage and you're not somebody who wears vintage.
It's like a modern mix, like you have contemporary and whatever. It's not, because they're like, when I was younger, I feel like if you were into vintage, it was like everything is vintage, like you're totally pure vintage all the time.
Right, like, you know, Vicky from Reality Bites, like she had the Starsky and Hutch lunchbox and all that, but now it's like you can actually go to the office wearing a vintage dress and you look classy. It's not necessarily like you are doing everything from 3 decades ago and that's your hardcore focus in your style of dress or your house. Like you can mix and match. I guess that's sort of like what the new trend is, because if you open a design magazine now, it's not all, like I think in the 80s, everything was uber contemporary and everything was made today. So now it's like if you open a design magazine, people have stuff from different decades and they sort of mix it in.
Yeah,
so
there's less of a matchy-matchiness, which I think is the trend itself, not the fact that it's vintage. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's super played out and cliche, but people still love Danish modern. I mean, everyone is looking for teak, Danish modern, anything that looks like it was on Mad Men. I mean, you know how on Mad Men they're always drinking from those cocktail glasses with the silver rims? Yeah. Like, people sell out of those immediately because everyone's like, ooh, Don Draper, Don Draper.
Right.
So that kind of stuff.
Bar accessories, period, like a bar cart, you know, tools, seltzer bottle, whatever, any of those things, I think, are relatively popular and usually under $100. The value is in, you know, how much someone's willing to pay for it, but also how much time and effort went into the pick, if you will, you know.
Yeah.
Like, because they have to pay themselves, and so even though they got something for $2, like, they restored it. You know, I just met with one of our vendors, and she has an accessories and shoemaking degree, like that's her past, but now she's a clothing and accessories etc. vendor, and she goes into each like shoe purchase and she'll go in and repair each and every shoe. Like she like loves the shoe, you know, and like her passion is then transferred into the item. So all of her work to find it, to fix it up and everything like makes the price what it is.
Right.
But it's still probably less than H&M. I think that the process of sourcing them is special. I think, you know, the shopper picking it out, like, and envisioning it as part of like their unique vignette in their home or on their body or whatever, that makes it special. It's about the people that use it. It's not big business. I think that's what makes it special.
You find stuff that you would just never see somewhere else, and it's a conversation piece, or it's something that uniquely identifies you and that nobody else has. I mean, it's like two girls that go to prom and they're both wearing the same dress, and you're like, oh my God. Not that people care if, you know, I have the same dining table as you do, or the same vase in my house, or the same blouse, but, and then there are certain vintage items that you see over and over again that come into popularity, like, you know, these like brass quails, or, you know, what are those like heads, those ceramic heads that people would paint in the 70s that are like, you had them before.
Did I?
It's like the girl and the boy, and they have those little faces.
I totally did.
And the crazy thing is too, like Urban Outfitters then kind of looks at the trends, like when owls were really big, so then Urban Outfitters is like, and then they start mass producing fake vintage stuff to match what those vintage trends are. So, you know, they are more special, but at the same time, sometimes you're walking around at the bazaar or thrift store or something, and you're like, seen it. But
there are some repetitive,
things that you see all the time. But for the most part, it's like people really pulled together some stuff that you wouldn't think of or you wouldn't find anywhere else. So it's an experience.